This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Well, hello there, Pacer Nation, and welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden. No Michael J. Facci today. Our boy is out of commission. Once again, this guy takes more vacations than anybody else I know in the world, but that's what Facci does. I'm out this weekend. I'm out these next 7 days. I'm out. Okay, Facci, don't worry. Alex will do what Alex does. He'll hold the show down. Like always. So don't worry, man. That's what we do. We keep it moving. But here to join me today to talk people we want to see make the biggest jump this season for the Pacers. It's my good friend Casey on the drums, a.k.a. Casey Johnson. Casey, with the coolest background I think we ever get on this podcast. Instead of a blank wall that I have, he's got Caitlin Clark posters, Reggie Miller's banner, Pacers banner, welcome back PG. I mean, he's even got Victor Oladipo stuff ready for action. I mean, this guy is showing how long he's been a Pacer fan. So, Casey, I've been rambling now for about 3 minutes. How are you doing? What's up, buddy?
Oh, man, I'm good. I've been, I don't know. So, you know, because we've talked about it before, my first ever, drumming gig was playing Southern Gospel. And one of the bands that I was in we sang a song called Learning How to Live Again. And in a completely different context, I feel like that's what I've been doing because for one, now my wife is woefully invested and she'll just be sitting there staring into space and I'll be like, honey, what's wrong? And she'll be like, I miss basketball. I miss the Pacers and basketball. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, life is like that. And the funny thing was, because Game 7, of course, was Game 7. And I had a very interesting way of experiencing that because I actually had a store meeting at my work at 7. So my wife, Nia, went there to the watch party and she got seats for the two of us. And then I did my store meeting real quick. And I went there and I was 3 streets away from the field house when Ty tore his Achilles.
No.
And so I and about 30 people who were also entering the field house at the time faced some very weird decisions because it's we are about to go in, to watch the watch party. And all of us saw what just happened. Everybody's sitting there with their head in their hands, what is going on? So we went inside and, obviously the game went the way that it went. And we're driving down 65. And I said, well, do you want some good news? And she said, what? And I said, this is literally the worst that being a sports fan can feel. This is the actual, we're losing your star player in Game 7 to the worst possible injury when he was cooking. This is the worst. So you're at rock bottom and you, God willing, you will never be this low again. I even ran that. I sent it to you. I ran it by Chat GPT, hoping to receive some reassurance. Hey, Chat GPT, do you think this was the singularly most devastating injury maybe in the history of sports that didn't result in a death? I mean, Game 7, blah, 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 blah. And Chat GPT was like, yeah, that sounds pretty bad. And I was like, you were not supposed to say that. You were supposed to be
I remember when you texted me that. I forgot about that conversation. That's wild. I mean, let me just say this, in terms of a Pacer fan, an injury like that was the most devastating one I've ever experienced just because of the magnitude of it. I would say the second one, and I know a lot of people probably say Victor Oladipo, that one's not it for me. I think it's when Paul George broke his leg on August 1st. Maybe it was August 2nd. I can't remember. I think it was August 1st. And I was at an event. I wasn't even watching the exhibition game. And somebody was like, Paul George just broke his leg. He's out for the year. I said, okay, that's funny. Quit messing with me. I know, I'm a Pacer fan. What are you doing? They're like, I'm not messing. Look at I'm like, I don't want to see this. This is a joke, right? Then I had to see it. I was like, man, I'm so sick to my stomach because they were coming off 2 Eastern Conference Finals runs prior to that with the Pacers. Yeah. So that one really stung for me when Paul George went down. And obviously the Oladipo one sucked too. That's probably number 3 for me. But in terms of injury wise, but the Haliburton one, clearly the worst just because he was cooking. He was absolutely torching OKC. They were not ready for what they were about to get from the Pacers. They were going to lose that game. But you got your shirt.
I did.
Tyrese choke shirt.
as soon as WWE released this shirt, it's a WWE and who's in a ring. As soon as WWE released this shirt, I ordered it, and it got delivered 2 days after the finals. And it sat there unopened in the package for like a week and a half because I couldn't open it.
Oh man, yeah. There's a lot of people that couldn't listen to the podcast for a while because of how upset they were. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a lot of doom scrolling for that week plus after the finals because everybody was just like so devastated, and I don't want to keep talking about it because it makes me sad when I think about it. But
Yeah.
you know, it was obviously the most incredible playoff run I've ever experienced as a fan, as someone doing this for media, like just super awesome. But let's get into today's stuff because we do have another segment after this with our fan of the week. So we don't want to make this show 4 hours long, but let's get into it. Top 5 players that we want to see make the biggest jump this year for the Pacers. At number 5, who do you got?
So at number 5, I have that I want to see take the biggest leap for the Pacers this year is Andrew Nembhard. Now, the reason I have him at 5, and we are doing this in order of importance here, the reason that I have him at number 5 is because I don't necessarily think it's his skills per se that need to be the one to take the big leap. Now, obviously, we hope that the regular season shooting comes along, but you know, if he's a bad regular season shooter and then a shooting god in the playoffs, I'll take that, you know, as a long-term proposition, like definitely better than the other way around. Because, I mean, if you were a good shooter in the regular season and then disappeared in the playoffs, the grass is certainly not greener. But if you...
Nice.
I know. I'm proud of that one. It happened right on the spot, and I just went with it. But I think that what really we need to see a shift and a leap from Andrew Nembhard this year is, I don't want to say a pass first mindset because he's always going to be a scorer, but I'll say like a facilitate first mindset. I haven't been quite as gung-ho on Nembhard's facilitation as maybe some others have been. And a lot of times I think it's just because, particularly when the offense is humming, sometimes he has a tendency to bring it to a halt where the ball is just sticking with him for like 3 or 4 possessions at a time. And I think that is something where if he's not able to get that in check to a certain extent as the primary ball handler, it could turn into an iso ball thing real quick. And it's just something that you don't want. Is he skilled enough to do it? Absolutely. But I'm really interested to see what he walks into this year doing, saying, you are definitively the point guard. It's your job, not just to get yours, but to set others up. I know he has the skill set for it. The question is, to what extent does he actually do it?
I think it's a great point. It really is. I'm a big Nembhard guy. I think everybody that listens to this podcast knows my infatuation with Andrew Nembhard.
Never noticed.
Yeah. You know, get hard, stay hard, Andrew Nembhard, okay?
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna put it out there. He's gonna be higher on my list, but I do understand your reasoning. Like, there are some pros and cons to his game. I think he's gonna be in a much different role this year where they're gonna ask him to do different things.
Yeah.
So we'll have to monitor how he handles this load of being the primary ball handler for 82 games if he can stay healthy for that long, because that's another thing that's concerning. But I want to save all of my thoughts on him because for me at number 5, I'm going with Johnny Furphy. I feel like for Furphy, the panic button to develop now is not there yet for me. So I want to see him make a big jump. I want to see him kind of take Ben Shepherd's role if that's what's possibly on the table. But I'm not overly concerned about it if he doesn't. So that's why I have him at 5. I debated between him and Jay Huff. Jay Huff did not make my list. I thought about putting Jay Huff at number 5, but he is 27. So it's like, what kind of jump is he going to make? But that was why I, debated those two there. But I think Furphy at 5 makes the most sense because if he can make a jump, like, wow, that's great for the Pacers. I think he's somebody that they might be able just to retain on their roster and not include in a trade if they do make a bigger trade and someone that could fill in for a bigger role if they do trade some players, because I think he's that capable on both offense and defense. So I'm a big Furphy believer, but it's been a very, 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 very small sample size, and I don't want to get too carried away with what we've just seen in small packages. But the force that he plays with, the way that he cuts with purpose, I feel very confident that he can find a role in this offense, and I think Rick Carlisle is going to love him and adore him when he's on the floor because of the way he plays. So that's why I have Furphy at 5.
And I've got Furphy at number 4. So
look at that.
Great minds,
Instinct,
I guess.
Baby.
But
let me just say this real quick. I have Nembhard at 4.
Okay, yeah, it worked out. The only reason I put Furphy above Nembhard is mostly because Andrew Nembhard is going to be a part of this team moving forward no matter what, I feel.
I hope. My fingers are crossed. He could be a very, very, very valuable piece in a trade package.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, with our front office, I sort of have such implicit trust for them at this point to like they could trade, Nembhard for Westbrook, and I would be like, they see something that we don't. Like,
they would not get that pass from me.
It's a gross overstatement.
That is a gross overstatement. Do not say that ever again, please. I
might say it again, but
no,
but
I'm kidding.
For
Continue.
me, if Furphy does what we know Furphy can do, and a huge part of that too is rebounding, right? He's a very good natural rebounder. If he can just unlock his potential a little bit, that relaxes. It's kind of like loosening your shoelace all the way down near the toe, and then the rest of it just kind of relaxes a little bit, because the decisions that you have to make with Matherin, with Jarris, with Ben, with Furphy himself, with a guy like James Wiseman, what is Jay Huff moving forward? Is Isaiah Jackson the guy? All of those things are all together with this equal tension. And if the guy who is sort of at the back of a lot of that in a lot of ways in Johnny Furphy, the second year guy with no expectations who we just think has a nose for the ball, if he is able to make a tangible leap forward to just go from, I feel like that's an NBA player to that's an NBA player, that gives the front office such latitude to make some of those tough decisions and not worry about, well, we have to hope Furphy comes along. If Furphy's coming along, then that makes it a lot easier. So I actually think he is an interesting linchpin to this discussion, because he is sort of in the next man up spot. He's working for it. Let's see if he can, in effect, put the pressure on other folks and simultaneously take some of the pressure off of the front office once consolidation time comes around.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's really good to kind of see like, hey, can Furphy put pressure on other guys that are above him to get better? Because if they're like, man, Furphy's like coming down, the hole, like, hey, this is a guy that's coming for our spot, you could be in big trouble. And I think that's a really great point that you bring up there. And kind of just going on to my next one here with Nembhard, obviously, you've pretty much talked about it. I have viewed Andrew Nembhard, in my opinion, as the third most important pacer on this roster when healthy outside of Haliburton and Siakam. And I tweeted about it. I've talked about it on this podcast at times, even going back to last year. I understand Miles was your third highest paid player, like a very important piece of this team, and did a lot of great things. Without Nembhard's secondary ball handling, without Nembhard's ability to guard the other team's best player on a night-to-night basis, like, you don't get to the NBA Finals of Game 7 without Andrew Nembhard. Like, what he did to Jalen Brunson in Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Finals after being labeled, oh, this guy has no chance against Brunson. They have to put Nesmith on him. There's no way he can guard him. Like, yeah, it kind of felt like that was real. And even after Game 1, like, they tried him at times and Brunson was just having his way, and the narrative kept coming back and coming back. But once that series kind of settled down and he got really into his grill in Game 6, I thought it was just unbelievable what he was able to do. So we've kind of already seen him at, like, not peak yet, but he's definitely peaking towards being an all NBA defender, right? Which we already know that. Offensively, this is a great opportunity for him to expand his game. How much more can he develop as a setup guy? How much more will he actually look for a shot? Because there are times, like you said, he can get kind of caught in isolation ball where he dribbles the ball too much, but there's also times where he won't shoot the basketball when he needs to shoot. And he needs to be close to 18, maybe 16 to 18 points a game, I feel like, next year. Maybe 16 and 8, 16 and 9, something along those lines, where he is a consistent scorer in all three levels. And we see it in the playoffs. The consistency has to be there in the regular season. So I just feel like for making a big jump, like, you want to see him make a big one, but I think other guys need to make bigger jumps
Yes.
than Nimhard based on where he's already at, because I feel like his baseline is a lot higher than the guys that I have left on my list.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can definitely agree with that. It's at least a facsimile of a lot of the same reasons why I had him fairly low on the list. He's going to be absolutely critical to this season, but so much of it is in here and not within the body, not within the hands. And I think that's maybe one of the most interesting storylines going into this season is what any of that looks like.
Yeah. All right, let's go to your number 3. Who do you have?
Number 3, I have Jarris Walker.
Okay.
So to me, this is one of the reasons why I'm really hoping for a big leap this year from Jarris Walker is because I really want good things for him, and I want him to be a legitimate long-term NBA player. And it feels like this year is going to be a little bit make or break for that in some form. It's definitely a hinge point year for him. And a lot of it is, obviously we get back to the whole thing of effort is a skill, but a lot of it is mental in a very similar way to what we talked about tangentially with Andrew Nimhard, where Jarris Walker, we've heard it from, Chad said it to you. We've heard it from person after person after person. Jarris has to play with more force. And my biggest issue with Jarris especially last year is he would have all of these really good spots, and then it would just certain aspects of what he did and for certain periods of time would just look like a pickup game. And he would throw the ball away and kind of be like, oh shucks. And it created this really interesting dynamic between he and Ben Shepherd, because Shepherd did so much of the quiet stuff so well and wasn't as good at the loud stuff. And Jarris did so much of the loud stuff so well, but it was a lot of the quiet stuff.
Great point.
Fundamentals that held him back. And so if you are a coach, most of the time you're going to opt for the guy who does the quiet stuff well, even if his shot isn't going down, as opposed to the guy who's on a heater, but his 4 turnovers will cost you the game at a certain point.
This is great stuff right here, Casey. I think this is what fans. I'm serious though, because like I even get caught up in the moment too. It's like Jarris Walker has hit 5 threes in a row. Like, why is he not playing over Ben Shepherd? Ben Shepherd shooting like 22% from 3.
Yeah,
but you're talking about all the important stuff here, because Ben Shepherd is not getting beat on defense. Ben Shepherd is not having willy-nilly gamble plays like we've talked about with Jarris Walker. He's also not turning the ball over at a consistent rate. And so it's like, who's more trustworthy? Who's got a higher ceiling, but who's more trustworthy? And I think it's a great point, because like I said, I get caught up in the moment where I'm just like, man, how is Shepherd getting minutes over Jarris? But what you're saying is just absolute facts.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where now the onus is on Jarris. Period. We are in a point, you are going to get minutes this year, young man.
Yeah.
This is opportunity for you. It's opportunity, to be frank, that nobody really wants the circumstances of the opportunity, but life relentlessly gives us unwanted opportunities so that we can make the best of them. And this is one of those situations in his career where Jarris, my friend, everybody wants what's best for you. This is your year to make that not a discussion. Not for nothing. This is your year to make it so that there's no discussion of playing a guy who's shooting 20-ish% from 3-point and can't get a bucket to go down a lot of the time over you. Your ceiling is there. You have to reach that glass ceiling. You have to grab the brass ring, and at a certain point you have to take it. So that's why, admittedly, Ben Shepherd is not on my list.
Oh, come on.
It's not. Jarris Walker is, because I feel like this is Jarris's year to come in and from training camp on say nope.
Yeah.
And it's that also. That is killer instinct, and the killer instinct is what we need to see from him overall. So it just, to me, it all works together. Jarris Walker has, I mean, down the line, he has something like an all-star ceiling. He's a fantastic player when he wants to be.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of doing it consistently and staying locked in, not having mental lapses. And this is his year to really put in those minutes, in my mind.
Yeah, I'm going to get to Jarris Walker later in my list. I do not have him at number 3 for me. Actually, at number 3 for me is where I have Benedict Mathurin. And so, similar to what I said about Andrew Nembhard, like, I feel like we've already kind of seen Mathurin take leaps, you know, in terms of development the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so for year 4, it's like, I definitely want to see him keep growing. I want to see him make another big jump. But I think it's more so on the defensive side of things, because I think everyone will say, oh, I want to see Mathurin be a 20-point game per, 20 points per game scorer. Want to see him lead this team in like scoring and whatnot, kind of like have that opportunity as a shooting guard to lead this team. Mm-hmm. You just kind of set it up for me perfectly by talking about the Shepherd Jarris thing and why Rick was favoring Shepherd over Jarris at times and for a long period of time. If Ben can get better as a defender and as a secondary ball handler next to Nembhard, this is going to make life so much easier for him and for the Pacers, and the success of this team will get better. And I think he's going to relish in that opportunity. I really do. But I also have to realize it's a contract year. And so he's going to be on his best behavior, but he's also going to be going out there trying to prove that he's worth a big payday, because we know that payday will be coming. And we do realize that there are more teams next season that will have cap space flexibility to make it challenging for the Pacers. So there is a reason why that I have mentioned him several times on the podcast as the biggest trade target or trade piece, trade chip moving forward, and it's because of the uncertainty of like how much they're going to have to pay him and what they view him as. Is he a sixth man for this team? Is he a long-term starter? That is the big question mark for me. But when it comes to making a big jump, I don't know if the big jump can even really come offensively. Like, I don't think it'd be a big jump. It would be a jump, but not a big jump, because we know what he can do. I just think defensively, like I mentioned, that's the big thing for me in ball handling, and in terms of being a secondary ball handler, someone that can be more of a playmaker too, because he does get tunnel vision, and I've preached it several different times. Like, don't make him be somebody he's not. Let him relish in what he's good at. And I think they could still tap into that while also encouraging him, kind of like you mentioned with Jarris playing with force and playing a little bit more consistently like that. That to me is where Mathurin's opportunity could be bigger. So I'm a fan of Mathurin. I know it probably doesn't sound like it, because I'm always saying, this guy could be traded, but it's just the reality of the thing, because I like Mathurin. I think he's a good player. Yeah, there's a reason why the Pacers made it to a Game 7. It's because of Mathurin's heroics and the playoff runs that they had. He had some really great performances, and he's one of those only guys that can get to the bucket and finish through contact, create fouls. Like, that is a special gift that he has. Yep. But in terms of making a big jump, I just think there's guys I would have above him for that.
Yeah. And I mean, also in your defense with the trade thing, like, sometimes you have to listen to people who know and listen to like what they're not saying. Like, you guys had Scotto on a couple of days ago and you mentioned it, and he was like, well, people have called. Like,
who are these people? Who are these people?
Exactly. Like, but like,
other GMs.
And there's so many permutations of details that get removed by the time that one sentence makes it to a podcast. You know, obviously there's going to be discussions all over the place because everybody feels consolidation is coming for the Pacers. Mm-hmm. I am not weirdly, I'm not as worried about a leap from Mathurin this year. My spiciest thing that's going to happen well, maybe not, because I've got an interesting thing I'm going to say later, but I actually don't have Mathurin on my list, and the reason why I don't have Mathurin on my list at all is simply because I feel as though most of the jump from him in many ways is going to take care of itself. Also because with my last couple of spots, I kind of wanted to look at this exercise in a different way, but with Ben, a lot of those statistical leaps are going to come from reps, and I think a lot of the defensive leaps are going to come from reps and not having to look over his shoulder and worry. It's
Good
going
point.
to be a different flow. He's going to be out there with Nimhard, which a lot of times has produced better results for him, even than him being out there with Tyrese. So in a weird way, I'm not worried about Ben this year. I'm actually more worried about some other players because I feel like Ben is going to keep being Ben, but for longer every night. And really, defense is so much about effort. You mentioned he's in a contract year. I think effort is going to be there. So for the most part, I'm pretty. I don't want to say lukewarm. I'm even keel as far as
Yeah.
Ben.
That's interesting that he didn't even make your top 5. I was a little bit surprised to hear that. Now
Yeah.
I'm really wanting to know, since we've already done your top 3, who is number 2 for you?
So number 2, and the funny thing is, you made this joke right before we started recording, but literally the person I see want to take the biggest jump this year is Isaiah Jackson.
But he's not number 1.
He's not number 1. No, he's not.
I'm really curious who your number 1 is now.
Oh, you're gonna like it too. I know you are.
So your number 2 is Isaiah Jackson?
My number 2 is Isaiah Jackson.
That is my number 2 as well.
The reason that I say Isaiah Jackson is twofold. Number one, obviously, there's this curiosity factor surrounding whether or not we have a starting center on our hands, whether we can develop a starting center, what's going to happen there, how he facilitates working within this offense. But also, man, I'm criminally curious because on Locked On about a month ago, Tony said a small sentence that's really been resonating with me, and it was kind of just something that he threw in there, but it reframed my entirety of how I'm thinking about Wiseman, Jackson, Haliburton. Is, well, if they are investing in Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, then they must have faith in their Achilles rehab program. And the way that he said the Achilles rehab program, I thought, oh, okay, I need to watch Isaiah Jackson, because Isaiah Jackson is going to be our number 1 litmus test for how successful they have been at rehabbing the Achilles. And as such, what we might be getting in terms of a Haliburton return next year. It's not going to be 1-to-1. But the number 1 thing that you worry about losing with an Achilles injury is athleticism. And Isaiah Jackson is one of the freakiest athletes any of us has ever seen. So in a weird way, I'm almost not worried about him on the court, because if we get 90% of Isaiah Jackson back on the basketball court, he's still one of the freakiest athletes we've ever seen.
Yeah.
If you take the 40-inch vertical and you bring it down to 37, I'm willing to live with that.
Right.
But what we get from Isaiah Jackson shows us what we might be able to pencil in a different way, different sides of the same coin, for our franchise player moving forward. And the fact that they give him a $21 million, the fact that it's over 3 years, to me, that not only means that they have faith in him, but it starts to make me potentially believe that there was at least one other team somewhere out there that would have been willing to take a chance on him. And if him doing his rehab is getting to the point where he's doing well enough that there's interest, definitely from the Pacers, potentially from other forces, making it a $7 million contract rather than maybe the minimum, I think that is just such a good sign for him. So I'm going to be watching him super closely on top of this center battle that we have coming up.
Yeah, the center battle to me is what I am most intrigued by, because if he can make a big jump and prove to Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, and Rick Carlisle and his staff that he is the long-term center option for the Pacers, that is a steal of a contract. At $7 million per year on average. I know it does descend. I think it's a little bit more this year than it will descend over the next couple of years. So you're looking at under $7 million potentially for your starting center the next 2 years after this season. Like, that's really, really awesome and really helpful, especially when you're trying to kind of build out your roster. So to me, like, that is why I want to see him make that biggest jump, because it just makes so many things easier for what you do at the center spot moving forward. Because like I mentioned, you're going to have Jay Huff as your backup. And you know how many times I feel like I'm saying the wrong name when I say Jay Huff because it feels like such a fake name. It doesn't even feel real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I saying that right? Like I did it on the radio one time. I was talking about Jay Huff and I was like, is his first name actually Jay? I just said Huff because I was like, I'm not going to say Jay because I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, it feels like that 1 year of my career in 2K where you had to go through the G League. It's like, this guy is a created player. He's a very good created player, but you know.
Yeah, a 7-foot white guy named Jay Huff. And it's like, am I saying this right? Like, it feels like I'm just kind of like making up something. But regardless, I'm just saying Isaiah Jackson has an opportunity here. Hand it to him on a silver platter. And it's like, go out there and take it. Because if you can go out there and take this and prove that you are worthy of being a starting 5 in this league, then that is such a huge help for the Pacers moving forward. And that's why I had him at number 2, just because I feel like his development at this spot, it's basically, am I a starter or am I not? And I feel like some of the other guys, we kind of already know for the most part, like what their role is going to be, even when Haliburton comes back. But for Jackson, like, it's either, man, if I don't pan out, can I get traded? Because that's kind of where it's at. And $7 million is a decent amount of money to pair with something else if you're trying to do a smaller consolidation trade as well. So good player, still not better than Miles right now, but I would be very intrigued to see what he can do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in so many ways, the run that he's going to have this year, potentially being your starting center opening night, whether or not they choose this. I mean, I've been public about saying I think it might be a better idea to have Jay Huff having the heavier minutes night 1 with Jackson coming off of the Achilles, maybe bring him on a little bit slowly, but either way, with him on your starting 1 track for the year, in some ways too, there are less expectations and less pressure because they're like, hey, we think that you can be our backup either way. But do you want to be a starter? You should go prove to us that you can be a starter.
Right. Well, I will say this for the number 1 spot here that I have on my list. We already know that my number 1 is Jarris Walker because I said I had Jarris Walker later on the list. Yes. I don't know who your number 1 is, so I'm going to save that for a second and kind of tease it here to end our conversation. But for me, Jarris Walker, I mean, you mentioned a lot of great stuff there earlier with Jarris and all the good and everything I reiterated. One thing I will say with Jarris, it's just like, I feel like it's either make it or break it for year 3 for him. And it's like the opportunity is finally there for him to be in the rotation consistently. And I'm hoping, did you make it?
Nope.
Come on, Casey. You can't.
I could have lied. I could have lied, but
should have lied.
That's one of nope. That's one of the Big 10. I can't.
That's very true. The Big 10.
Yeah,
following that. Good for you. But anyway, got to keep it moving here with the Pacers conversation. Jarris, to me, like, I want him to prove like he can be in the conversation of playing with the starters to close out games. Like, that is the growth I want to see from Jarris this year. I don't want to see it where it's just like, hey, he's in the rotation consistently. Like, this is great, playing 12 minutes to 16 minutes a night, like whatever. That's fine and dandy. But I want to see him potentially at the end of a game playing out there with Nembhard, Mathurin, Neesmith, and Siakam. Like, can he be the 5th starter out there in a game? And like, I almost tweeted this out today, but I was like, I'll just save it for later. But I was like, most Indianapolis sports fans right now are concerned about if Anthony Richardson can pan out as the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm more so worried about that starting or that closing 5 right there at the end of the game and like what they could do. Like, that to me is like where I'm at mentally with my sports fandom. I just don't really give a crap about the Colts. And I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan. And obviously, the trade deadline just happened, and they're selling everybody left and right in terms of their pitching staff. And it seems like John Mozeliak is, obviously his last year as the running things as the president of baseball operations. So I'm like, the 2 other teams I like besides the Pacers, they're kind of just like in flux, right? They're not really doing anything. So I'm just so infatuated by the Pacers and what they could do moving forward. And Jarris Walker to me is like just the darling of that because he's got everything you want and potentially you're starting small forward. And can he pan out to be someone that they could rely on potentially within the next couple of years as that long-term starter they've been looking for? Do they not have to make a trade because Jarris Walker can develop into that? Yeah. I don't feel confident about that, but that is why I want to see him make the biggest, jump this year, because if he can, holy cow, like that is massive for the Pacers. Can he have an Aaron Neesmith level of a jump where he goes from a guy that couldn't get off the bench in Boston to a starter. Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so weird to like hear the New Balance ads on podcasts now, and like Aaron Neesmith is the person that they lead with.
I know.
New Balance ads, and it's like I do a double take every time. I'm still not used to it. Part of me thinks, "Hey, that almost sounded like they said Aaron Neesmith," and it's the thing about Jarris is, and we were kind of on this earlier. It's right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there for him. He already has the talent in spades to make that happen for himself. If he can just, I mean, even just go from being locked in 70% of the time to a good 90% of the time, he's a starter in this league.
Yeah.
He just has to, in a way, it's not even that he has to stay out of his own head. He has to get into his own head a little bit more sometimes. And yeah, I mean, it's such a linchpin year for him. And this is definitely one of those where we will see whether or not the kid has it this year. And I think he has it. Just need to see it unlocked.
Okay, so you told us that you don't have Ben Matherin on your list.
Right. That's
You
correct.
said you don't have Ben Shepherd on your list.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned Johnny Furphy, Andrew Nemhard,
Yep.
Jarris Walker, and Isaiah Jackson.
Sure have.
But you haven't revealed your number one player that you want to see make the biggest jump this year for the Pacers. Can I guess who it is? Can you give me a hint without giving it away?
I don't know. My biggest hint would probably be it's not who you're thinking.
Okay, can I go off the wall? I'm going to go off the wall, and I'm going to say James Wiseman.
It's not James Wiseman.
Okay.
It's not James Wiseman.
I was either thinking James Wiseman or Obi Toppin.
So my number one constitutes a completely different way to view this exercise.
Oh, boy.
However, and I promise I can justify this, my number one is Tyrese Haliburton.
Oh, Lord. Okay, this is going to be the weirdest conversation.
It is. But here's the thing.
How can he make a jump if he doesn't play?
I'm so glad that you asked that. What do you get when you give a star player a potentially career-threatening injury who happens to be one of the best basketball minds that is currently on the court in today's game, and you give him a year where he cannot play basketball to do nothing but scout, study, and learn?
Okay.
There will be no physical leap from Tyrese Haliburton this year. There will be no leap in his play from Tyrese Haliburton this year. However, spending so much time essentially being a part of the coaching staff, spending so much time watching game film like it's his job, and furthermore, using all of the game tape that he can find as he learns what could potentially be his new limitations coming back from this Achilles injury. Is the explosiveness going to be there? Is the athleticism going to be there? What's going to be different about his game? Tyrese has not only an entire year to figure out how to work with what his new limitations are going to be. He has an entire year to figure out the way that the offense needs to work around him. He has an entire year to figure out what the rest of Tyrese Haliburton's career is going to look like. If he takes this mental leap, as it were, this year, we're not going to see the dividends of it on the court next year. However, him taking that mental leap, learning everything that he can about the game, diving into basketball from a different perspective than he's ever seen it before, is by far the most pivotal single journey that is going to happen in 2025 and 2026 from any Pacers player. Because learning what Tyrese Haliburton is going to be, him learning what he's going to be, him learning how to work around it, and him learning what he needs moving forward is going to inform the next 10 years of this franchise. And that's why he's my number one. We're not going to see the leap, but I want to see him involved. I want to see him around the coaching staff. I want to hear about all of the crazy film that he's watching. I want to see him being around because he's already so smart. He already knows the game so well, and he has got such a big brain for the game that legitimately him learning more about basketball is a little bit scary, but considering how obsessed he is with basketball, he's literally being forced to for the next year and a half, and that is, I think, scary for the rest of the league, but it should be something that we're paying attention to diligently and making sure that is going to be a part of the process, because that is the true make or break that's happening off the court for this season.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I hear your point. I understand your point. And I like that you went off the wall. I'm not going to lie to you. The more you were talking, the more I said, I'm glad this is not so cookie cutter because it's very easy to not think outside of the box. And this to me was a very much, I'm going to think outside of the box a little bit, or I want to use this time to just talk about what Haliburton can do.
I mean, we can only listen to, hey, it would be nice if Ben Shepherd finds his shot.
Yeah, but trust me.
Too,
Yeah, I mean, it's the off season, right? So this is definitely a nice time to kind of bring this up and remind people like Haliburton can still have a year of growth even if he isn't playing. And I think that's what you're kind of trying to put out there, which makes a lot of sense because I'm just trying to make sure I'm processing everything you said because I think that it was well thought out. I think it was a good point, and I'm sorry if I kind of dismissed it with my initial reaction because I'm just like,
I live for that.
Well, I told you today, like we were messaging back and forth about the podcast and things like that. I was like, man, you should be a writer. Like you definitely have the chops and the words to put things to life. Like if you read any of Casey's messages, like you can feel like it's not just like a, hey, what's up? Okay, no problem. Like it's not like the quick stuff. It's like, oh, I'm going to make a joke and I'm going to use quotations. Like he just knows how to put stories to life in a text. And I really appreciate that. But Tyrese Haliburton, obviously, like I think it's a great point because we know that he's going to get better mentally by just studying so much. And like we already know, like he's gonna have the itch to get back out there so bad because he just loves the game so much. So you combine the two with the opportunity to get so much stronger with his upper body as well.
Yeah,
like it's not a bad way to come about getting him at number one. So I appreciate, you for thinking outside of the box, and I'm slapping myself on the hand here for being so boring. And I'm sure people in the YouTube comments will call me out for it because I was laughing after our trade targets ideas. Someone said, typical Alex, scoffs at everything Facci says, and then his is even more unrealistic. And I'm just like, I love the pettiness from fans. It's great. People just love to hate. I think it's great that that's what you want to comment. But no, I think that you're doing a great job here, Casey, making me think about something I wasn't thinking about. And so if I'm not thinking about it, I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that were not thinking about this. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I'm coming around, and I have come around to your number one, and I respect the heck out of it.
I appreciate that, man. That's the crazy thing about what Tyrese Haliburton's going through. We like to compare, everybody's been worse after the Achilles injury or whatever. And not to sound weird about it or too homerish, but Tyrese Haliburton has never torn his Achilles.
True.
Everybody knows Tyrese is just a different type of human being. He had Achilles surgery and then mere days later was at a Fever game and then was at the Summer League practice. This is not to say that like Jason Tatum isn't awesome, and an all NBA player and a superstar and stuff, but like I doubt even Jason Tatum with his love for the game would be at the Summer League practices right after his Achilles, Like Tyrese craves it. He wants to be around it. And that is legitimately scary for 29 other teams because he has nothing to do for the next 18 months except think about how much better he's going to be and think about all of the stuff he can add to the game. And by the way, his jumper's going to be fine because he doesn't even really jump.
True.
So it's like he doesn't hardly even need his legs for the jumper. Like that. The future is still very bright, my friends.
It is bright, and it is brighter than Facci's white pasty arms and a tank top after the Pacers have won a game. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for the first segment here of, are you looking at your arms?
I just know I'm not far behind him.
Right, but I mean,
do I look like somebody who hikes
We're smart enough to wear black though and cover it up.
It's true. It's true. But on the other hand, you gotta really respect the boldness of, you know what, this is the deal and it's going to be on the internet. And I understand that the internet is forever and it's going to be there.
Do I have to respect it?
I think it's in your best interest.
Maybe I'll respect Dr. Fauci, but I don't know. I don't know if I can respect rocking the tank tops, especially when you're actively wearing the worst jersey possible to come on the podcast talk about. I'm not gonna wear my Matherin jersey anymore. I'm gonna throw on my oversized whatever jersey he had. I mean, this guy, he's just cracking me up. But Casey, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you. Thank you for coming on and doing this list with me. Ladies and gentlemen, do not turn the channel. My man Cory is going to be joining us next here on our Fan of the Week segment, so make sure you guys tune into that. And with that being said, we're going to take a quick commercial break and come on with Cory right after this. All right, everybody, joining us now on Set of the Pace, it is our Fan of the Week, and is my guy, Cory Gill. Cory told me before we got on that he is not a social media guy, so he lives in the moment, and he does not have to scroll Twitter while watching these games, so I'm excited to get his point of view on everything. But Cory, thank you so much for coming on, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm glad you reached out via email and we were able to set this up. It really does mean a lot to me to get to know our fans and kind of know where they come from and what they think about the show and what they think about the Pacers, because obviously that's what Facci and I are. We're fans. And so Facci is unable to join us on today's episode. He's out of town right now, but wanted to get your perspective on how you became a fan of the Indiana Pacers and what drew you to this team.
Sure. So I'm 39 years old. So I grew up, in central Indiana, kind of in the pre-Peyton Manning era. So in a sense, the Pacers were really the main game in town. My family has had season tickets for decades at this point. So back in the early 90s, would go to games at Market Square Arena, and we had really good seats. They were 3 or 4 rows up. So, imagine being a 6 or 7-year-old kid and seeing Dominique Wilkins and Patrick Ewing and all these guys, coming into Indianapolis to face their team. I mean, it's just exciting, enthralling, and I was hooked, from the time I was probably in kindergarten or first grade, and here I am today.
Hey, winning breeds fans, and I think that's the thing the Pacers have always kind of built their franchise on is we want to win at the highest level, because when we win, people are engaged. When we lose, people don't care. And I feel like for the most part, that's kind of how the Colts are even right now to this point. People are excited for football season, but I haven't really heard too much hype about the actual Colts doing anything other than hoping Anthony Richardson can stick in that and figure things out as a starting quarterback. But I think it's a great point, and it's kind of a great parallel when you look at both teams, because about 20-ish years apart, obviously 25 years apart, but still I think it all kind of resonates, because it's the Colts are kind of in this gap, year, or this gap era, and the Pacers just are coming off the cusp of a Game 7 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So before we jump into next season and maybe some of your thoughts on the offseason, whatever, curious your thoughts on last year's playoff run where the Pacers ultimately fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Game 7 of the NBA Finals.
Well, the experience was absolutely incredible. I mean, I've been around, for at least every modern Pacers' deep run into the playoffs. And in previous years, you would get like one or two huge Reggie Miller moments maybe per run, but in this run, we had like four major Tyrese Haliburton moments in the span of like 8 weeks or whatever it was. So it was kind of the most exhausting but also exciting experience in my life as a sports fan.
Yeah.
I would say especially one that sticks out for sure is game one of the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, I was watching that and I was into most of the game, and the Pacers started to fall behind. And I actually started like ironing my clothes and not really paying that much attention to what was going on. I kind of had one eye on the game.
Do people still iron their clothes?
I guess my job. But in all fairness, it was steam cleaning, so it's the easier, the easier option.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. But I noticed maybe there were 5 minutes to go. They were getting closer. The game was like kind of becoming uncomfortable for the Knicks. So I went upstairs and told my wife, "It's like, you got to turn this on." I mean, she's a casual basketball fan. Like, she'll indulge me and kind of watch the games when they're getting interesting. And that's when when Haliburton hit that game tying shot. I mean, I hadn't jumped up and down like that in a number of years, and I thought that he had won the game, and so I was like temporarily deflated because going into overtime, I was thinking, if the Knicks somehow pull this off, they're going to hold this over our heads, for the next 30 years. So it was a exciting overtime to see that. So between that and game one of the finals, I mean, those are probably two of the most exciting games that I can remember in 30 years of following.
I mean, yeah, there's a reason why the game one in the NBA Finals was number one on NBA.com's best clutch play of the year, and then number 3 was the Haliburton game tying shot in Madison Square Garden where the ball dropped. And I will just tell you this, like last year around October, my heart went into AFib, and so I got a Fitbit just to kind of monitor my heart rate. And during that run against the Knicks, when the Pacers came back and Haliburton hit that shot, my heart rate was like at like 130, 140. And usually at resting, I'm at like 65, 67. So like it was just insane. And I couldn't believe it. I thought he had won the game too. I was like, there's no way. Like, he got the choke sign out and everything. And then they almost blew it in overtime. Thankfully, they were able to find a way to win it. But that game was so special. And I think for every Pacer fan, they will say game one against the New York Knicks and that comeback that they had, because like it was just insane what Aaron Nesmith was doing as well. Like, it just seemed improbable. So that to me probably is the one that sticks out the most. But overall, like, just a great run. Obviously, you hate that it ended the way that it did. But let's move into this upcoming season. Obviously, we've talked on this podcast a lot about the moves that have been made and the moves that haven't been made, I guess you could say. So what have you thought so far of the offseason?
Well, I would say, like, with the departure of Miles Turner, I mean, I have really complicated feelings about that. I wouldn't classify myself as a Turner hater, but I was definitely at some points a big Turner critic. But I also acknowledge, that there were a lot of things that he was often doing right on the court, especially defensively, that, when you have a guy like that for 10 years, you may start to take his strengths for granted a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, going into next year, is everything going to seem okay, with the center by committee, or is this going to be a you don't know what you got till it's gone, type of situation where there are glaring deficiencies? But I will say, Jay Huff is a really interesting acquisition to me. I think about guys like, Aaron Nesmith, or even maybe like a Jalen Smith type, where, maybe they showed a few flashes in other places and then they came to Indiana. And I think with our player development and the culture around the team, they really blossomed. So I don't know how much of an impact he'll have, but I think he could be exponentially, shining out much more than he has at his other stops in the NBA. So I'm really interested to see how that goes, and looking forward to a lot of interesting dunks too.
Yeah. Let's stay with Jay Huff just for a second then, because obviously this is a guy that's coming on, at 27 years old, minimum contract over the next couple of years. Like, what do we really expect? Because this guy's been a third string center for the majority of his career. We hear Chad Buchanan on the podcast talk about how he really liked him when he was with the Capital City Go-Go in a game against the Mad Ants, and he played really well, and Quentin Jackson was in that game for the Go-Go as well. Like, it's just kind of like weird to think about all that right now. But I'm just curious your thoughts, because Jay Huff obviously does have a lot of the similar skill sets as a Miles Turner, not to the same level and not to the same magnitude of, oh, he's been in these big moments. But the Pacers, like you mentioned, they've done a great job of developing players. So what gives you confidence that Jay Huff can be another player that the Pacers develop and turn into somebody that plays above their pay grade?
Well, I think, I did see a little bit of him in Memphis, and he definitely seemed like a guy who, could, I mean, they run an entirely different type of offensive system there. But if you look at, you know, kind of his height and weight and the way that he moves around on the court, I think that he's someone who, can thrive in like a slower system, kind of like what Memphis runs, and maybe a slowish system in Indiana next year. That kind of remains to be seen. But also a guy that when Haliburton comes back, I think a lot of his strengths could be, accentuated by a player like that in a more higher paced kind of offensive system. And another thing that I think where he will add a lot of value is that he does seem like a guy that's capable, of playing 24 minutes a game, and maybe the defense and the rebounding isn't that great, but he'll, kind of hold his own on the offensive end and be kind of a bridge that will allow, an Isaiah Jackson maybe to not play quite as many minutes early in the year, because coming back from those Achilles injuries can be scary. So to have a guy like Huff, who I think you can trust, playing a decent chunk of minutes a game, it's not only going to help the Pacers, with him on the court, but also it's a big assist to our guys coming off those serious injuries. They don't have to feel like, they have to do everything right away.
I mean, that's a really good point, because I've seen people bring that up in terms of who should be the starter heading into the season. And I feel like I just kind of defaulted to Isaiah Jackson, assuming he'd be ready to go, since I said he was around 80-90% at Summer League. But what you're saying there kind of seems like you're maybe leaning more Jay Huff as a starter to get things rolling, and then kind of integrate Jackson into things and let him ease into it with that injury.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big Isaiah Jackson fan. I think he's got all the potential in the world. I mean, this is a guy that if he could just develop a fairly consistent mid-range shot, even, I mean, not even talking about 3-pointers, I think, he could be a really useful piece. But coming off the injury again, it really does make me nervous. And I think that's someone who, I think the Pacers will be fairly conservative with early in the season, probably won't have him on back-to-backs. And that's where Jay Huff, I think, will show a lot of his value. And I'm really happy that we have him, under contract for a little while, because this is a guy that if he was on and expiring, who knows what his market could look like in the next offseason.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that the Pacers are targeting him, knowing they have him for the next 3 years of team control, I believe it is. So really interesting. And if they go out and make a bigger, splashier move, and maybe they can keep him as one of their backup bigs, they feel pretty confident about that. I mean, it's just a lot of intrigue there with him. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you now and let you play host. Are there any questions you'd like to ask me about the podcast or about the Pacers or anything?
Yeah, one question about the Pacers. I just find it fascinating because, I'm out in Washington, D.C. now. And so I follow a lot of like East Coast sports teams. And you see out here, there's really, the New York Knicks kind of being a prime example. There's not a lot of openness with the media. I think their GM like hasn't given a press conference in like 4 years or something like that. And the Pacers is just entirely different. So, kind of interested in your thoughts as to like, why you think the Pacers take that kind of approach, and just your experiences engaging with them generally, as someone in the local media out there.
Okay, I would just say Hoosier hospitality does seem like a real thing with these people that are in, the front office, starting from Kevin Pritchard down to Chad and Ted. Just a little bit of a programming note for everybody. Ted Wu, the assistant general manager, will be joining us in a couple of weeks here on Setting the Pace as well. So, it's always great to hear from our front office and just kind of hear what they're thinking and kind of pick their brains. But they're just really incredible people, and how they act on the podcast is how I've interacted with them in person. I know Kevin Pritchard hasn't been on the podcast in about 3 or 4 years, but every time I see him, we'll talk in person. He'll ask me how I'm doing, ask me about my family. Like, a lot of times it's not even about the Pacers. It's just about life. And I think I really appreciate that about them, is they understand the human side of things more so than just the business side of things. And so when you kind of have to go through both, like juggling that and just making things seem personable, it's real. And it feels like we talk about the Pacers culture quite a bit with Tyrese Haliburton at the helm. I think Haliburton kind of changed not just the way the locker room is, but the way the front office kind of does things. And from organizational down, like from the top of the organization down, like it's just they really care about people and they really want to make sure they make everybody feel like family. Like TJ McConnell's Players Tribune article was 1,000% accurate. And I'm not there on the road games. I'm only there for home games, but I've been to a few road games as a fan, and you can just tell like very well connected. So it's really honestly like something you won't see from a lot of organizations, in my opinion. Their openness to come on a podcast like ours for free and talk about a lot of different stuff and share a lot of interesting tidbits, like that's very rare. So obviously I'm grateful and I appreciate it, but it's not going to change my way of critiquing the team as well, because, you know, I think if I'm not honest about how I feel about the team, then they're not going to respect what I have to say either. So it's just that fine balance of being fair, but also, you know, having an open mind when you're talking about the team.
For sure. And, you know, I think you've seen the other teams now taking notice of the Pacers' success. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't think I've heard this talked about too much, is there was a rumor recently, I think reported in the media up in Toronto, that Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which is like the entity that runs, I think the Raptors and maybe some of the other major league franchises up there, that they were interested both in Pritchard or Buchanan to replace Masai Ujiri. And I just wanted to know if you had heard that and kind of what you thought about that rumor.
Yeah, so I don't know how much of this is like public record or not, but basically when Chad Buchanan was on this podcast, I think we might have asked him off air about that. He didn't really say too much, but he kind of denied it. Like, he's like, I don't know where that rumor came from. So, I mean, it probably makes you feel good to see that your front office is being targeted by other teams because they like the way they run things. And somebody had mentioned like the Raptors desperately need to make some trades because they have a lot of the same type of players on their roster. And Kevin Pritchard is a genius at making those kind of trades. And so it would make some sense for him to go there. But I don't know. I mean, KP's in his 60s. I'm not saying he's old or anything like that, but he's pretty established here with what he's done. I mean, he was Larry Bird's assistant general manager for a long time, or he was a GM while Bird was the president. So like he was here for a while. I know Chad and KP worked together out in Portland before he came here. So there's just a really good relationship here. And I don't really think they want to break that up just for a bigger role right now. But I mean, if something came up and they felt like it was a good opportunity to move on, I don't blame them for taking it. But, you know, it's one of those things where Toronto, I don't know if that's the right place or right fit for either of them. Not saying that they don't want to be in the United States, but like Canada is also just like maybe another barrier that could keep them from wanting to go there.
For sure.
So any other questions you have about the podcast, about the Pacers, anything else you want to ask?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, we are, I think next year, maybe the expectations are a little bit less. But what would you say to, like, you know, maybe a casual Pacers fan who, you know, looks at the landscape of next season and maybe is a little bit pessimistic and wonders, you know, should I dedicate time and energy to following this team? Like, what would be kind of your elevator pitch, I guess, to keep fans interested?
I always find when expectations are low that the seasons can be kind of more fun to watch because there's not the built up pressure of we have to defend what we just did. And I kind of felt that coming into this season. Like the Pacers made the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics and they got swept. Everyone called it a fluke run. I wasn't sure how to kind of anticipate how they would respond. And I think the front office with their messaging in the offseason last year, it was like, we're not saying that we're a championship team right now. We're still trying to develop a lot of young players. So they were very hesitant to say like, hey, we can get back there. We're that talented. I think things kind of broke nicely for them this year as well with just, you know, the amount of players that went down with injury. Like obviously the Cavaliers were dealing with their own stuff when they were playing the Pacers in that series. And then of course, Jason Tatum gets hurt. The Celtics end up falling to the Knicks in 6. And so I just think that they've had a nice couple of breaks here where that doesn't usually happen, but that usually does occur throughout the playoffs and things like that when teams that maybe aren't supposed to be there in the NBA Finals get there. But for this upcoming season, I would say if you care about player development at all, this is a very young team that's going to have a lot of opportunities for guys to use this time without Haliburton and without Miles Turner on the roster to develop and grow. And with more opportunities, that could make them even better for when Haliburton does return. And so the next year, it's kind of like you're like wow, we lost Miles Turner basically from this roster, but we can still compete at a very high level because we're able to replace what Miles did with our center by committee. And then Andrew Nimhard got a ton of reps this past season as our lead point guard. Ben Mathurin stepped up and kind of evolved into more of a scoring guard that can figure out how to go against the top defenses in the league. Jarris Walker took another step. Johnny Furphy, Ben Shepherd, like you can just start naming names. Isaiah Jackson proved that he can be a starting five. Like there's just so many things you can look forward to this season that'll get you excited for when Haliburton returns. Like this is a growth year. It's not a gap year, but it's a year for growth. And I think that's the best way for me to kind of like pitch it to fans. Like if you want to see this young team grow, this is the year to watch them. They've got the best coaching staff, in my opinion, in the entire NBA. They're going to have opportunities, and they're still going to be able to compete, in my opinion, at a level that can get them into the playoffs.
Sure. If I could throw one more at you. Yeah, when I was listening to, I think, the top 10 trade targets podcast that you all did earlier this week, I'm telling you, if I was Ben Shepherd, I would have been really nervous about all the 3-point shooters you all were talking about. So where do you see him going? I mean, I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I'm really afraid that he's on kind of a Chris Duarte career path.
Yeah.
And I really hope, that he's able to bounce back and we don't have to necessarily trade for another 3-point shooter or require someone like that. I really hope Ben can fill that role. Do you think, that's something he's capable of, or what are you looking at from him next year?
Well, he looked really good 2 years ago in the playoffs, and I'm pretty sure he shot the ball well in the playoffs this year. Like it was way better than it was in the regular season. Like he was so cold from three at one point in his sophomore season. I was like, why are they playing him over Jarris Walker? Like that is how I felt genuinely about the whole thing. And it's just Ben Shepherd is a very capable defender who does the right things. Very good player that fits in with what this ecosystem is. But I do wonder if we've kind of seen his max, right? If we've seen the ceiling of what he'll reach. I don't want to put a label on him because I feel like this season's a great opportunity for him to grow even more. So I don't want to do that. But if you're looking at who they've drafted ahead of him in terms of like first round picks, and then the way that Chad kind of mentioned Johnny Furphy being in a similar boat to him in terms of like the way they play, but Furphy being a little bit more forceful and being able to like be more aggressive and do things like that. Like it does kind of feel like maybe Shepherd's time is borrowed here for the Pacers, and Furphy could kind of be like his replacement, even though they're different positions. I'm kind of monitoring that as well. I like Ben Shepherd as a player. I don't love him. The Chris Duarte comparison, it's very fair because they're both a little bit older. They played college ball for a while. Now he's not 24 getting drafted, but still at 26, it's a little more justifiable than a top 14 pick in the lottery. So I like him, but I wouldn't count on him being a long-term piece here. But he could also be one of those guys that, because his contract's so small, he does hang around a little bit longer, and maybe some of your bigger fish are used in trade stuff because, 3-point shooting is going to be huge. And if he can't hit threes, I think they're going to have to move on from him.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer on that. I'm trying to figure out the best way to close this. Let me get your best Pacers memory.
Best Pacers memory
of all time to close this out.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, I was in the building for the Memorial Day Miracle, which was the shot that Rick Smits hit over Tree Rollins, I believe in the 95 Eastern Conference Finals, I think game 4. And I was there with my dad, and we were, maybe like, because we didn't get the season tickets for that game. I think someone else in my family got them. So we were like, 2 or 3 rows up at the very top. And I'm telling you, when that shot went in, I've never heard any sporting arena that loud. I mean, Market Square Arena, it felt like the roof was going to blow off that place.
But let me cut you off real quick because I'm curious, because I was never really in Market Square Arena because I was born in 92. And so when I was there, maybe I was really young and don't remember it. So what is the biggest difference between MSA and Gainbridge?
I mean, definitely noise. I think MSA would just get loud. The acoustics must have been different. I don't really know how these buildings are constructed, but the way that it was put together, it just seems like it facilitated noise, like quite well. I mean, in some of those Knicks playoff series, I mean, you could barely hear yourself think, and they weren't piping in, crowd noise like they were in OKC during the finals. I mean, this was just
Let's go. Yeah, call them little frauds out.
Yeah, and there were none of those, bell clapper things either. I mean, it was just fans screaming and going crazy, and it was a hostile environment, and it was a great place to watch basketball back in the day. But Gainbridge, of course, it's much nicer in there, much more well apportioned. So they both have their strengths and weaknesses, and I enjoy going to both.
Yeah, that's great, man. I think Gainbridge Fieldhouse is an awesome place to watch a game. There's not a bad seat in the house, and the fans are great. It's loud in there too. It'll give you goosebumps. I'm not gonna lie. Like some of these playoff runs, awesome stuff to see. Awesome stuff to see. So Cory, I appreciate you, man. I really do. I appreciate you reaching out via email, coming on this podcast, and being our fan of the week. I wanted to ask you where people can connect with you at. I know you're not on social media, but if you want to connect with any Pacer fans, is there a place they can find you?
Not really, but maybe I will. You're inspiring me to get back on Twitter, X, whatever they call it.
I'm not trying to do that. It can be a dark place sometimes. We do have our chat BCC over on the Setting the Pace app, right? The chat BCC app. So if you want to join that, you could be a part of that. But
you know what? I will do that. It helps me minimize on the scrolling.
Yeah. Trust me.
Twitter is a very addictive environment, and it is hard to curate a positive feed. That's for sure.
That is very true. It is a very dark place at times, and I will not lie the amount of hours I have spent scrolling for no reason at all. So, Cory, it has been a great time talking with you, my man. Thank you for being such a fan of the podcast and of the Pacers. We really appreciate you. And Pacer Nation, we're going to go ahead and sign off. If you would like to be a fan of the week, email me at alexgoldenmba@gmail.com. I'm going to try to make sure we do this on the regular in August, because August will be more of a downtime for me and Facci, as we're going to cut back to 3 days a week on the podcast, but might sprinkle in more fan interviews just to kind of get your guys' thoughts on everything that happened this year and what we have moving forward. So with that being said, Pacer Nation, we appreciate you. And if you're a big fan of this show, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to y'all next week.